待たせいたしました。これより
Thank you for waiting. We now would like to start the session 8. Tokyo as a New Silicon Valley is the title of this session. Our moderator, journalist Mr. Yasuyuki Onishi. And for our panelists, we have Yasukane Matsumoto, a founder and CEO of Raksul, Inc. And founder and CEO of Creww, Inc., Mr. Sorato Ijichi, Japan Association of New Economies executive member. And from Gree, Inc., founder and chairman and CEO, Mr. Yoshikazu Tanaka, is also the executive member of JANE, Japan Association of New Economy, the president and of CyberAgent Incorporation, and vice president director of JANE, Mr. Susumu Fujita. So I'd like to ask Mr. Onishi to take over. And hello, everybody. So today, let me first introduce myself. I'm a journalist. Once again, my name is Onishi. As of the 31st of March, I retired Nikkei newspaper company. I did not start a new company, but kind of a late startup business of my own. So I have all the veterans, as long as I'm concerned, of the new businesses as panelists, and how we'll talk about how we can turn Tokyo as a new Silicon Valley. And first, I'd like to ask each panelist to introduce themselves with an episode they may have when they started up their company, and also what made them want to start up a new company. So can I ask Fujita-san to start? And once again, my name is Fujita of CyberAgent. Hello. And I started my company 18 years ago. So I'm not sure we are still a startup or not. I know you are more than a startup now. I started my own company at the age of 24. I graduated university and worked for a company just for 1 year and quit and started up a new company. I was fortunate when I entered the university. I really did a very intensive study to enter into a university, and was able to get into Aoyama Gakuin University. So I didn't care about the college graduation much. And also, I actually wanted to work for a venture company, and a company called Intelligence, which only had 80 people. And so I didn't have any hesitation to leave the company either. So both my academic competence and the career name or company name, I didn't have anything to speak of. True, it was rather risky, but it didn't have much to lose. So, but your classmates from Aoyama Gakuin University, they wanted to work for a large company. Yes. Compared with the Todai, Waseda, they can get disposed of easily. I didn't mean to. Well, I didn't really study long for them. You didn't, and I only spent 6 months of intensive study to get in there only. So back then you had a sense of business. Yes, I was always thinking about risk and return, and the risk of losing something by starting a new company, and the return of if I should succeed was tremendous. So you went into a venture company thinking you will start your own company anyhow, and I wanted to put myself in an environment where I can get all the necessary competence. And in large Japanese enterprises, workers 20 years before 30 years old, it's like a training period. But I wanted to get more experience. Well, the people of my generation and would think that they go into a major company, and then once you get into how you can go up the ladder, and that itself is a risk, I think. And the Japanese popular companies like Fujita Television back then was very popular. And if I got into such a company, I wouldn't have left the company. Dentsu or is also a good company. Then I wouldn't have left the company, and I don't think I had the life I have now. So I was fortunate that I worked for a venture company which I could leave very easily. And you had Uno-san and other people who started a new company. What influenced you? Only 10 years difference. They were in early 30s, and they were struggling, and I saw them. And so I wanted to do the same, and I thought I could do the same as well too. So it was very real for large corporations. The very old people are running the company, so it's hard to identify with them. So you had mentors right in front of you, accessible. Yes, thank you. Tanaka-san, please. And my name is Tanaka of Gree, and I was trying to get into the company almost 20 years ago, so I'm not sure whether my experience has any bearing. And I graduated from university in 1999 and looking for a job back then. And one thing I had in mind was wanting to work for internet industry. Back then, not everybody had PC, not too many people had access to internet, so there was no mobile phone. So I was often said that Yoshikazu likes Word and Excel, but I was talking about internet. And so that was quite a gap of what I was looking for and what other people thought of internet, because internet was not used that much. And there aren't too many companies who were working on the internet with the internet. So, but I could identify a few companies. For example, NTTs. I got an offer from them, from Recruit, and I didn't make it through the second round. And IBM, I couldn't make it in the written exam. Yahoo, I had a final interview with the president, but couldn't get an offer. And also Sonnet, Sony's Communication Network Corporation, is where I got offered. And I wasn't interested in the TV, and NTT, they couldn't tell me what I would be doing. And so Sonnet was the only possible way that I will be working with internet. But NTT is an excellent company, isn't it? And you didn't think of working for them? NTT is harder to get in than IBM, right? Not necessarily. My parents back then were employees of a kind of a manager in a major company, and gave me difficult time asking me why not working for NTT. But I wanted to make sure that I want to work with internet, so I convinced my parents. Okay, so when did you identify the potential of internet? Well, I still think of giving too much thoughts. By the year 20 years old, I thought that I had to have a lifetime goal, and I was always thinking that I had to have that since middle school and high school. And Yahoo, Amazon were founded back then, and when they come to Japan, and I wanted to be a player, and that's the kind of life I wanted to have. And after that, so I was wondering how I can get into that field since high school or so. And Sonnet, well, if in fact Sonnet was brand new, if I graduated earlier, I wouldn't have any company. But you knew Yahoo as in high school back then, and Amazon Foundation. I always liked gaming, and the release date of Dragon Quest was something interesting. And I noticed that the Nikkei company had earlier information than Famicom. So we asked my parents to change the newspaper from general paper to Nikkei. And reading newspaper, internet is the thing of the world future. That's how I got interested in Nikkei. So Nikkei was helpful. Yes, thanks to Nikkei, I used to read, not only read, but make a scrap of articles about the Silicon Valley. I was always had a sense of urgency. And so I left the Sonnet and after a year and entered Rakuten. So I owed to Mikitani-san. Back then, Rakuten was the third year or fourth year after its foundation. It was like a connecting dots, one of those examples of connecting dots. And I graduated from Nippon University, and there was hardly anybody who had owned PC, and didn't have anybody who I could talk about internet. And so using the search, I put the internet, and I contacted the companies, and some companies said, people say, why are you here? And I was told, well, we're busy. And why do you bother to come here? And I came to know a friend from Keio University, and then found about the Mikitani-san, and the company has PCs. And Keio has PCs, and I would go there and be at the cafeteria, and came to make friends. And a friend got an offer from Accenture, but instead wanted to go to MDM, Rakuten, from a Rakuten company. And what kind of company? It's that the Harvard graduate is starting the company. And I also thought that he is a very capable person, and so very few friends who were into internet, and I asked him to introduce myself to that, even though the company at the time started only 6 or 7 people. And at the time, we went out for Korean barbecue dinner, and that's how I found out about Rakuten. And so I thought Rakuten was better after my working for them.
What's your first impression about Mikitani-san when you bumped into him? He didn't impress me much, and just regular old guy. But that's it, though. A question was raised, and why you started a company, and Harvard means an elite in culture, definitely, and that was the an observation I was making. And why you wanted to start your own business? In order for me to make Japan a much better place, actually, instead of talking about academic things, why not go for something realistic? And then I had to work on a set of actions. That was kind of things, and he was sharing with us. And 35 years old, and back then, and he hasn't achieved a thing, and back then, and what the heck he was talking about. But still, I was kind of impressed, and with what he was telling me back then in front of me. I still remember that moment very vividly. Well, thank you again for sharing that. So you joined the Rakuten. Just like Fujita-san's comment earlier, whether or not you out of your own will you join the company, or you joined the company and you wanted to stay there for some years to come. Well, I think I was quite lucky because given really good experiences back then. And when I was thinking about the job. The first thing came to mind was, of course, the internet and Amazon, and Yahoo, and eBay, and world and the things, and I was influenced by. Then I came to know about the venture and business things, and after I joined the company, and I was myself, and I made a big mistake. Of course, that isn't good, and as far as the company goes. But again, that was my new learning after I joined the company. Back then, the only venture business was Rakuten. The only venture in the business, and I happen to know, and I was telling myself that I should be able to work on the internet side, and I decided to meet Mr. Mikitani. And back then I was 22 or 23 years old, and I'm way too young. I maybe cannot make any contributions to the company, but again, 4 million and the was the number given to me, and where do you live? And I happen to live in Mitaka. My parents live there, and far away from the office. And so I decided to actually relocate myself. And actually, back then the office was located in Utenji. So relocated from Matsumoto to Utenji. So I decided to move to the Utenji. Why you moved to the Utenji, Mr. Tanaka? Well, you actually asked me to move to the much closer location, and so he picked up my salary, and also he picked up the location for me to live. Ijichi-san, could you share your experiences? Thank you again for this opportunity. My name is Ijichi, Creww. I was 15 years old and 16 years old. Yes, I decided to leave Japan. Actually, I flew to the United States and on my own. You are very unique back then. Yes, you're right. So the high school and the college, and then I created businesses, and actually, and in 2009, and I decided to sell the business. Then I moved on to the Philippines. Then I came back to Japan due to the March 11 things and earthquake and the tsunami. Then I founded Creww, my company. The startups and entrepreneurs, and they needed resources, and for them, why not offer these resources and for those people who are going to start their own business and as entrepreneurs. I thought I should be offering efficiency and best productivity. Small businesses and startups, and as for the startups, and of course, there are many people offering help and assistance. I wanted to challenge myself on something unprecedented, startups and entrepreneurs, and I wanted to make my contributions and to drive economic activities and helping them, and that they should be able to actually improve the economic conditions in Japan. I happen to live many places in California and in Chicago, and I went to the Philippines, and I decided to challenge myself working on such platform, creating my company called Creww. You went to the United States when you were 15 years old, yes. And Mr. Son, of course, very famous. Mr. Son, and when he was a senior high school kid, he left home and left the United States, and he started studying at the Berkeley's. Why you decided to leave Japan for the United States, and when you were a senior high school student? Actually, one of the neighbors actually happens to be working for the United Nations, and that was kind of a trigger. And there was a kind of the exchange program. It was a miracle that I succeeded in getting that scholarship offered by my school. And no alternatives and no choices. And as to the location, actually, I spent 3 months in San Francisco and in California, but still. I didn't know where to go, and so 3 weeks after that, then I was asked to go to South Carolina, one of the boondocks, and actually above the Florida, there is not a single Japanese person on the East Coast side. So I was a senior high school student there. But you came back to Japan for college. You think about coming back to Japan and to study at the Japanese university or enter the Japanese the businesses. Well, that could have been possible, but again, I really enjoyed myself. And actually, I went to Canada. I graduated from the school there. Then I went to California and the university at the age of 18. I came back to Tokyo during the winter, the holiday, and then actually I started working for the convenience store. Actually, I was fired 3 days after I started working there. Why? Because you took picture lying down on the floor next to the refrigerator? No, of course not. Actually, I do not. I have no clue why they decided to let me go. So no way for me to be successful here in Japan. And so I should go back to outside of Japan. But I think I'm lucky enough and to okay so far. Well, you spend your days in those school days and when you're much younger, and this creating your own company was a natural thing for you to do. I would say yes, because there's so many people, acquaintances around me who actually started their own businesses. It is not necessarily something special. Graduating from university, and usually people may wish to join American businesses. You had not thought about those things. Actually, I wanted to become a lawyer. Actually, I was studying those lawyer legal things, and I was starting my part-time job. And anyway, I got started my business. Anyone you bumped into and had a great influence on you to make you believe that this is what you have to go for. Well, back then, actually, I did not have such a strong motivation. Being honest with you, but again, student and like me knows nothing, and I had to start from the scratch. There was no one who can help me around me. So it was truly educational and learning in the process, and I really enjoyed myself every minute. So it was quite natural for you to start this journey and be at this point of time in your life. Yes, you're right. Well, setting that aside, there are lots of social issues and problems, and I wanted to actually find solutions to this and the social issues and the challenges. What I call the mission-driven, I think is what I'm doing. Could you expand on the social issues? Well, for startups and how we could help them, and I'm talking about ecosystem in which they can be excited, helped. So when I was 21 years old, and I wasn't thinking about those lofty objectives. Mr. Matsumoto, please. Hello, how do you do? My name is Matsumoto, raksul. If I'd like to take a moment to explain my business and business cards and leaflets and printing business I do through the internet. And I'm not having a printer factory. So. And there are lots of inefficiencies in printing and process here in Japan. And why not to improve the efficiency and out of my operation? That's the way I got started my printing business. When I was 24, I started my business, and just like Fujita-san. But prior to that, I was working for the American consulting company in a Japanese subsidiary. Yasukane is the name of the organization, right? Yes, you're right. Why? Actually, I happen to be the kind of person who loves zero or the one digital world. I graduated from university in 2004, and back then Japan and China, and there was a business contest planned among the Japanese and Chinese and American students. So that was kind of a circle, and I got involved. There was nothing, and we need to do the funding on our own. And we need to come up with specific programs. And actually, we are able to complete that the process within 12 months. So I succeeded. I really got and enjoyed myself, creating something out of zero. So 0 and 1. And this relationship is going to be quite fun for me. That was the first experience, and I had fun. Then I had a part-time job in the CyberAgent, and back then. Mr. Fujita actually just published his article, the book rather, what's like in working on the Shibuya area as a project. And Livedoor was getting lots of attractions and venture, the boom and stock market boom. Well, they are back then, so I got involved in all these things, and I personally wanted to put my hands on all these things, and yes, that's what I did. So I found myself trying something new, and and I really can enjoy myself, seeing something which I've never seen, observed before. When I was finding my employer back in the year 2006, there was the Livedoor scandal, and on 2004 and 2005, actually, economy actually was growing, and actually, my mindset actually started moving into that direction, but. What is venture and something fishy? As for the venture, actually was a kind of the feeling general public was having. So I found known acquaintances, friends around me, and who actually trying to venture in activities, and furthermore, and also a kind of group of those people actually wanted to join foreign capital companies. So actually, I belong to the latter group, not having considered in depth. That's when I got started, and Ijichi, I was lucky enough to be able to join Ijichi consulting company. Yes, I joined Ijichi, and after I joined the company, what I found was. I think the company was a really good place for me to be trained. But when it comes to the creative things, creating things out of my own thought and ideas, maybe Ijichi is not the best in the company. In the first year, in the second year, actually, I decided to leave the company. Just after 18 months, I joined the company. I wanted to try something, which is going to be created and out of my own creativity. And so the lack of that actually was truly stressful. And the Lehman shock actually came along. Actually, many businesses decided to they go through the major restructuring and the cost reduction, and that was really the trigger point. I was involved in helping the businesses and in reducing indirect costs, and I made a big discovery that it is in this printing area they should be able to actually reduce the cost and structure to a large extent. So that was the observation I made, and out of the data I gathered. So there's a lot of inefficiencies, and why not make my contributions to address that issue by utilizing the internet. And I wanted to create something new out of my own creativity.
ありがとうございます。
I see. Thank you very much. And listen to what Matsumoto-san was saying, Livedoor shock. In the light of our topic, turning Tokyo as into a new Silicon Valley. And what is in the process, what is most missing, the people who wants to start a new company. I interact with college students. I often speak for their recruiting career opportunities, and they often talk about working for major companies, and they often mention that the Livedoor scandal, or in my generation, it was a recruit company scandal. In Japan, if you take a risk and succeed, then you get the target of criticism. So it's much secure to work for a major company, and unless we change this, we won't have a Silicon Valley, Tokyo version of Silicon Valley. Livedoor, you weren't involved in that, but you were very close with them, Livedoor people, right? Livedoor scandal suffered. Because of that, Japanese venture environment suffered, and also after the burst of net bubble, the stock price plummeted, and also it kind of chilled, so to say, the environment. And I think it's been 8 years, so I think we are making a comeback. as a whole industry. As you say, that the people who wants to start and is the most missing. I think we have lots of money who want to invest on the venture businesses. And in fact, in excess, even Japanese government, at least the current administration under Abe, is also want to promote the new businesses. So it's a following wind, and mass media now recognizes the young entrepreneurs and praise them much more so than in the past. But the really talented people do not start company. And Matsumoto-san is a career lead. I think people like Matsumoto-san should start with a very capable person with a very good education and a good career start. But they don't because they are scared. And what they're scared of is being embarrassed and fooled, I think. It's not about the money then. Reputation? I think we can get the funding fairly easily now, at least easier than in the past. And you can't lose much money because you don't have much money to start out with. So it's not a big deal anymore. I think in the Japanese society, to start a new company, you get mocked, or people who are working in a conservative environment even want to see them fail. The people see the people who are taking risk to fail. And so Horie-san, I think, is a very to the extreme. And I think he has made a huge impact. And he could withhold his statements in sometimes, but he goes ahead and said that. And because of him, and a lot of people think somebody like me, like it's better than Horie-san. For example, Mikitani-san, when started Rakuten Baseball, and he's better because he wears a suit other than the casual clothes Horie-san wear. And so, in a way, that the Horie-san is a pioneer, opened up a new field. And to change the subject, I always liked playing mahjong since I was a student. And if you don't participate in the competition, you end up losing. And people who just go for the participation, and the people who may actually lose a lot, but if you don't participate in the competition, you never win large either. So Horie-san is very precarious. He just plays his own game, so it's very risky. But if you don't take a risk, you don't gain much. And Tanaka-san, Gree was already up and running at the time of Livedoor scandal. It was when I was about to leave Rakuten and the scandal took place. So when I said I want to start my own company, you want to become another Horiemon? And I've been saying internet since I was junior high school. And I was very shocked that my parents didn't really understand what the internet was all about. And it was the time that the whole society thought everything about internet is like Horie-san's style. And that's not the case. And there are people, in fact, who were committed, all gathered together. And so I think that was the better side of that tough time back then, I see. Matsumoto-san, and you mentioned about Livedoor scandal. At the time, you were at the cyber, and you were in the college. Yes, I was in the second year, and the lesson back then was that you can't stand out. And the people, I was born in 1984. There are quite a few entrepreneurs, And we were told not to lose our balance and don't stand out. That was the sense I got from that scandal. And Fujita-san said that's not the good way. When I had a meal with him, and it says, not taking risk. And I agreed. And from then, I thought of intentionally get somewhat off balance. And recent, I think Matsumoto-san is very capable, so that's okay. But Mikitani-san was more like Horiemon, who used to talk big as well. And he was saying, that Mikitani-san was saying, 70% of cancers can be cured, he's saying. And, well, I wasn't sure whether I should take his words by its face value. But however, the people like him will bring the change. And if you talk large, and then you get criticized in Japan. So he was intentionally making that kind of statement and to change Japan. Son, what you thought of Japan, looking at Japan? Everybody is nobody's taking risk, and young people wanted for large companies. Back then, I wasn't aware of what's going on in Japan. And Livedoor scandal, I did not know when that was taking place. I only learned about it later, so I wasn't giving much thoughts. You're helping lots of startups now. Well, you've done the business outside of Japan as well too. But the Japanese startup entrepreneurs, young people, that is, what do you think is missing amongst them? Well, where, in other words, do you think you have to support them with your crew? We are a startup ourselves, so we are only making the platform which allows people who are capable of support can make support. Startups tend to start with a limited number of people, but their business asset is lacking in most cases, like a large customer base of millions of people or distribution channels and so on and so on, typically. However, if on the large companies have those assets and they want to make better use of them by offering that, and large companies or non-IT companies, legacy companies, and meeting up with the startups. And I think it's a win-win situation takes place. And startup can achieve something which might have taken 3 years. They can get the resource in 1 year, or the legacy companies also can get into a new business area. You've done so many matchups. Which succeeded best? And it depends on what you mean by success. One interesting case was that the one newspaper company in startup, and it's a sharing economy type startup company. It's basically a C2C service to offer excess spaces. If the 10 people want to go through the whole nation to identify excess space, however, newspaper companies have about 20 people with 7,200 people making rounds every day, delivering newspapers, and they can get the information so that they can feed such information to sharing service. Startup would have taken 3 years to get the information and about the excess space, and they can get the database in half a year or year. So the legacy newspaper company and sharing economy didn't think about matching them. But if you think about it, it's a very probable and a good combination. So that kind of a sharing or the combination, it's an infinite number of combinations possible, yes. And the legacy companies, their asset, which may not look like nothing to do with internet, but if the such asset resource can be made available through internet, and I think they can be very valuable. IoT or other technologies which allows the multiplication of different elements will make it happen. Well, actually, that's a good segue to the next topic. Well, there was a resource stock after 70 years of economic development after the war, and however, we are not making use of such resources and stock typically in the hands of major companies or in Tokyo metropolitan area. It's rather concentrated. We have a number of people, and however, office and infrastructures are available in Tokyo, but we don't have too many startup companies. How we make use of these stock resources to invigorate Tokyo is the key. Tanaka-san, how do you see the possibility of Tokyo? You started your company in Tokyo. I have a company in San Francisco and have 100 or 200 people there for the last 5 years, and so I often visit them. And what I feel by going San Francisco, I noticed the atmosphere is so different in Tokyo. When I had IPO, I went to San Francisco. I was like a rock star. And people love to see me. Oh, you're the Tanaka-san. And so many people, I did not know who they were, but they praised me. And I never expected that. And but being in Japan, Tanaka-san, you had IPO, you got rich, hey? It's like they don't want to talk about my business, but going to San Francisco, the people respected success, and I think that will encourage people to start their own companies. And even now, like we talked about Horie-san, and Japanese society is not too generous, lenient on people make mistakes in business or in their social lives. And I think we need to have more leniency to people who are crazy. And when I was working for Rakuten, we had Monday morning from 8 o'clock in the morning, every morning. And early in the morning, you go there, and Mikitani-san's first comment in the morning is in front of 300, 500 people. The first words is that you're not excited. And I would say, at 8 o'clock in the morning? And well, he says, if you're not excited at 8 o'clock in the morning, you should leave the company. And I thought it was very interesting. I was convinced this is an interesting company. I like that kind of approach. And I don't know whether it's a preferred in the society. Mikitani-san was so enthusiastic. He wanted everybody to feel that enthusiasm. And the feeling that way is good. But his expressions of that sentiment may not be the most appropriate, but we should really honor where he comes from and then try to support him, encourage them. That's what I wanted to do as an employee in Japan. And in Japan, lots of funding, but that kind of a sentiment and being lenient to those people who have wishes is very important.
Mr. Matsumoto, as you were talking about this point earlier, just like Fujita-san, there is money, right? And again, when you start your business, and usually not that difficult to have access to the funds needed. Yes, I agree to that point. Yes, you're right. But still, no many startups coming up to the surface. Yes, I think there was a session about in India. The number of startups, 18,000. I'm not quite sure that was a cumulative or the number of startups last year. Actually, I was talking to the guy next to me. Actually, more than 115 VCs. Here in Japan, probably here in Japan, we have around 100 VCs. But when it comes to the number of the entrepreneurs, I would say 1,000 per year. So again, the number of the people in the funding, Japan compared with India, actually probably Japan is 10x better in terms of funding. Actually, and I started a business called Hakubel. This is the distribution sharing economy services using the trucks. And last year, this kind of service actually got started at 51 last year in India. Here in Japan, we are the only one. 51 operations. Actually, the 7 out of that went in the Series A. So I would say there seems to be the basic difference between Japan and India actually. And then out of that, actually, they were able to actually raise funding, really a large amount of money, the 3 million yen actually, and they were able to actually move into the right direction and successful direction. Here in Japan, again, the so-called startups and unlisted companies, and there's so many companies like that, just like ours. So probably compared with the global countries, and probably there is a lack of the competitiveness. There's a good access to the money. Of course, that is a good thing, but at the same time, that may be resulting in the lukewarm kind of the competitive landscape, if I may say so. And another point, if I may, Mikitani-san, Fujita-san, Tanaka-san, and have created what they call the ecosystem, and we're living in this ecosystem, and how the organizations can be built, and how the business can grow. Such know-how actually has been available and becoming prevalent and among the people concerned. We're so lucky because we have this the ecosystem. But at the same time, I have to say that we have to look into quite a harsh environment at the same time. Fujita-san and Tanaka-san, in their positions, I think you have to think about new people and big investors and you have to be really good investors and mentors and to actually help the successors in these startups, the landscape. I wonder if you could share how you like to actually help the new people and what goes good and what goes wrong. Well, thank you again for the question. Actually, based upon my observations for the past 2 decades, I think things have changed. For example, prior to the internet bubble, actually, when I got started, actually, this is really a large change and coming up to the surface, and no businesses, big businesses were able to come along with that. And 2.0 and social media, and actually, big people, big businesses actually had no clue ideas and what to do. But back then, young people, no knowledge, no experiences, but they're just quite happy, just going for these new things. And this the New Economy Summit 2016, the IoT or sharing economy, those AI, those the these are the new areas. And be it the sharing economy and be it an IoT, the experiences or the knowledge, and also the power to move people. Actually, we need to have those capabilities in this the latest in the trends. But when it comes to the Tokyo and Japanese startup environment, still we still have lots of people and the kind of amateur students like people. And it is not the case that truly capable pro people decided to leave their companies and go for their own startups. So I think we need to get to see the good change in the quality. I think Tokyo is somewhat way behind. Are you encouraging the people? No, you like if you like to start your own operations, why don't you join me? Well, actually, I'm still one of the venture capital activities, and actually, I'm not good enough to nurture people. Tanaka-san, well, any advice from you? I'm sure that many people are approaching you and asking for your help and advice. And is there any criteria you pick up a specific people, the resources? We happen to have the investment function actually for the past 5 to 10 years, and yes, we are making investment. And which venture is going to be truly successful, and actually no one knows for sure, including me. And for example, this company, no way that this company is going to be successful, but recent, this actually had an IPO, and actually we were able to make a return out of the investment. Actually, this company was about to go under, so I thought this company is no way this company is going to be successful, but this company became so successful, and he actually completed the very successful IPO. So I did not have a good crystal ball, but again, the young people, including me, entrepreneurs, actually, whether or not there's a good chemistry, and whether or not we can actually enjoy a good chat, dialogues. And there could be differences in terms of age, in terms of the environments. I think, and out of those differences, diversities, and I can be truly excited. So size is not a problem. And those things, they're talking about, those, they are the front runners. And if I can get a point, and if I get kicked out of those dialogues, and why not to have a further, deeper engagement with them. And then I do hope that I can maintain a really good, lasting relationship in 5 years to come and 10 years to come. Again, out of this process, I should be able to, advise them. I think what you said is very important, critical, because you have your own experiences, and those experiences need to be shared. There's a good set of capabilities, but due to the lack of experiences, sometimes people are going to fail. And this was a point raised by Tanaka-san and another person earlier. Well, the experiences, Ijichi-san, you had lots of experiences outside of Japan, in the U.S. The ecosystem for the startups in the U.S. Was said to be really good. Well, that compared with Japan or Tokyo, what are the good things in their economy, the ecosystem? I'm not quite sure whether this is ecosystem related or not, but as mentioned by Tanaka-san earlier, entrepreneurs, whether or not entrepreneurs can be respected, I think definitely in the United States, and there is a mood for the respect. And not many startups, entrepreneurs, they come up to the surface in Japan. Probably there is a lack of respect, a kind of attitude. There is a lack of really good role models, if I'm not wrong. That said, actually, I have done this kind of things 4 times. Actually, so you have created the 4 companies. Actually, my relatives are still asking me a question: when are you going to, join a company? So here in Japan, Japanese culture, there is a kind of lack of respect vis-a-vis the entrepreneurs. What's the reason behind that? I'm thinking about it. Fujita-san, Tanaka-san, Mikitane-san, and those people definitely are excellent the examples. But but still, they are those figures, and still, people are going to say on TV. Versus whether or not there is a role model in your own neighborhood. It doesn't have to be big and gigantic, but again, if we could have those local, the community-based the role models and stars, then that may change the mindset among the Japanese people. So M&A is not taking place as an exit of startups. So that is still lacking, and there are lots of good successful stories in the USA. So we need to mass produce those successful stories. then that is going to help us and to get rid of this scary feelings we are still suffering from. As raised by Mr. Matsumoto, again, the situation is going on in India. I think the number and the volume definitely is going to help us going forward. So how we can actually have a scale and have with that point in mind, M&A probably is going to be a quite important point. And actually, for the past 4 years, and I am working really hard and with this point in mind.
I hope you the best of success. 2 sessions before, Andy Rubin was here, and he made a very exciting talk on this stage. And I was at Nikkei. I wrote an article about him, and the Nakani-san, who was also on the stage, and he used to work on the two-legged robot, walking robot at University of Tokyo, and he said. And that kind of robot was necessary after the 9/11 or the 3/11 earthquake, and he had a bigger robot, and he brought it to all different financial institutions and governmental institutions, and asking for 300 million yen, but he couldn't raise that much. And he knew if he had that much money, he could start up a business. People of the shaft people and wanted to start up the company in Japan, but nobody was willing to fund. So they were forced to go to the U.S. And there, Andy Ruby took up that opportunity right away in the teleconference. He thought it was very interesting. He said he's going to come and take a look at it, and came. And at Odaiba, I think at the time, a robot was being developed, and he said, "How much do you need?" And whatever, we'll put the money, whatever amount you need. And that's how that robot went into the Google. And that difference in taking a look at and understanding its potential and taking the risk to bring it to the market, there's quite a difference. In Japan, you said that there's money out there, but what gives that needed push so that Tokyo will become the new Silicon Valley, and the results of research. And there's kind of a exit as a acquisition. We don't. First of all, a lot of people do not like to be purchased, and it's almost like a failure. Some people say, and also in terms of the accounting system, there is some hurdles for purchasers as well too, and otherwise it's like there's only one very thin path to succeed, which is to go public, and Rascal, who is about to succeed in that, and getting a lot of funding sources. But the people who are doing kind of crazy things, and people think that this person is too crazy to be a president, so it's difficult to get the money. So the selling the business or technology as an exit scenario has to become a commonplace, and people should expect that. But in Japan, unfortunately, right now, if you have to sell, it means you didn't succeed. And Horie-san in the past, and when Livedoor was very popular, he said that if you get the purchase, he says thank you, and he was criticized badly, and because of the employees who are working, I think that's the reaction, and the Japanese culture doesn't change that easily. Tanaka-san, how can we change that? In Japan, in order to have a Tokyo originated innovation, deregulation is very important. And recently in the US, Airbnb and Uber are very popular, but none of them will work in Japan. It's illegal in Japan with the Japanese regulations. The flexible operation of the laws to support the innovation is not there. So you can't even start such a business. In Japan, I think if you want to become another Silicon Valley in Tokyo, then right now the taxi and the local companies, instead of talking about it now, once they are proven very successful outside of Japan, and we need to have a legal system which will be conducive for the initial ideas like that. So what you're looking for and what government is doing is totally different, and in fact totally opposite, and not the deregulation that we are experiencing right now, but what is commonly illegal under the Japanese law is often is the field in these states that a lot of innovation is taking place. And instead of choosing something what is allowed, you just do something and then change the situation. So it's totally opposite direction then. So, well, it's not just the concept, but it's not the concept, but it's the actual management and operation of the law, and really the scheme and the rules structure Japan has to be changed. So the Jane's role is very important. I have a very high hope for what Jane can do. Ijichi-san, how would you like to change Tokyo? As I said, that we need to have more of the entrepreneurs who have the success experience, and the major corporations matching up with the startups. And I can't expect the major companies to start purchasing startups and maybe collaborating or the investing. But initially, that's anything, some kind of a test out scheme, so that the both parties can learn each other for potential collaboration. And Matsumoto-san, and the challenge Japan has is very important, and startups tend to look for the models outside of Japan and make a copycat. But in Japan, there are different unique situations. The most advanced manufacturing, or the lack of laborers, but there was a lot of gap between the demand and supply, and raksul is exactly doing that. And the Japan unique situation will be experienced in China and Europe in the future. So the leading edge challenge in Japan should be solved not by operation, by technology. If we can do that, and if we can work in the structural issues with a large impact, if that can be focused in Japan and can be solved with technology, instead of solving that with operation, which major corporations have tried to do, if we become serious about that, and there is a lot of Tokyo originated solutions become available. Thank you very much for lots of very stimulative talks, and Tokyo originated innovations, and Tokyo as the second Silicon Valley. Probably the quickest way is that you will become legends, and so that the people would want to be like you, and there will be many followers, I believe. So I wish you the best of success. to change not just Tokyo but the whole Japan. Thank you very much. Let's give them a round of applause.